The ramp starts to drop, and the world turns into a single, narrow doorway. I'm so close to it, I can see the rivets in the metal, beads of seawater trembling with the engine's vibration. The landing craft, an LCVP, a Higgins boat, bucks in the chop like it's trying to shake us off. We're packed shoulder to shoulder, knees jammed into packs, rifles pinned against chests. My M1 Garand is slick in my hands. My fingers don't feel like mine anymore. Outside, the sky is going gray-blue. Not bright, not peaceful, just revealed. As if daylight is a curtain being pulled back on something that was waiting. Someone behind me whispers a prayer that sounds less like faith and more like bargaining. Someone else is breathing too fast, and I want to tell him to slow down. But the engine eats all words. The smell is salt and diesel and wet canvas, and underneath it, a faint, bitter bite of cordite drifting from somewhere ahead, like the beach is already burning its warning into the air. Then the first rounds hit the water. Not us. Water. Sharp slaps. Pops. The surface flickers as if the sea has turned to glass and someone is tapping it with fingernails. Men flinch without meaning to. A sergeant shouts, but the sound is torn apart by the engine and the surf. The ramp cable rattles. The bow grinds. We're close enough now that the coastline isn't a line anymore. It's a wall. Bluffs. Dark cuts. Smoke. Hard angles that look wrong in nature, like the earth has been carved into a weapon. The ramp drops another inch. And I feel it, the coin flip in my chest. Heads, I move. Tails, I freeze. Training says go. Every nerve says don't. Those two things collide inside me, and for a heartbeat, I can't tell which one is stronger. I think one stupid, pure thought, clear as a bell. If I hesitate, the ramp will become my grave. The ramp drops. Light pours in. And the doorway fills with tracers, bright threads sewing the air. The first man in front jerks like he's been yanked by an invisible rope and goes down. The second trips over him. The third tries to step through, and there's nowhere to step because the opening is clogged with bodies and straps and panic. For half a second, time stretches thin. So thin I can see droplets hanging in the air, can see the spray caught mid-flight, can see the orange needle lines passing inches from helmets. Then someone screams, close enough to be inside my skull. Move! Move! Off the ramp! I lurch forward. The water hits my thighs like ice. My pack drags. The rifle stays up because the rifle is the only thing my hands know how to do right now. The surf punches my chest. I stumble, go down to a knee, taste salt and sand and something metallic. Fear, maybe blood, maybe both. Bullets crack above the waterline. The sea pops all around me. And I realize the truth that will haunt the next 12 hours. You don't choose courage on Omaha. You choose motion. Again, and again, and again, until the beach stops trying to take you back. Men pour out of landing craft in broken streams, some running, some falling, some simply disappearing as the surf and weight and fire combine into one brutal equation. The first wave on Omaha is not greeted by sand. It is greeted by obstacles. Steel hedgehogs, wooden stakes angled seaward, mined ramps, coils of wire. The surf line is a maze designed to slow bodies down just long enough for for bullets to arrive. The tide pushes from behind while the beach refuses from the front, and every second a man spends in that squeeze becomes a target. The obstacles are not random wreckage. They are deliberate geometry. Hedgehogs and tetrahedrons meant to tear open a hull. Stakes tipped with mines meant to turn a landing craft into a coffin. Wire meant to snag a man long enough for a gunner to notice. Even the beach seems weaponized. Open sand with almost no folds. A shingle bank that offers cover only if you reach it. And bluffs that give defenders height, observation, and the clean advantage of angle. The weapons doing most of the work are not mysterious. They are brutally practical. Up on the bluffs and in concrete positions, German machine gun teams, especially the MG-42, lay down interlocking fire. The MG-42's rate of fire gives it a sound like ripping cloth, and it slices the open beach into lanes. Riflemen with Kar 98Ks pick at movement when it pauses. Mortar crews drop rounds in high arcs that land behind obstacles where men think they're safe. Every few minutes, an 88 or a field gun thumps from farther back, and the blast arrives as pressure more than sound. Among those crews is a young German corporal, barely into his 20s, face still soft under stubble, eyes narrowed against smoke and glare. He is not a famous name, not a commander. He is a function of the defense. One man on one gun in one position that dominates one section of sand. He lies behind the MG-42 with his cheek pressed to earth and concrete, assistant feeding belts into the receiver with hands that keep slipping because everything is damp. The corporal's world is a narrow slit of view. Surf, shingle, obstacles, bodies. He fires in short, disciplined bursts, the way he has been trained, enough to keep the barrel from glowing, enough to keep the beach pinned. When the gun pauses, the silence is not mercy. It is maintenance. A spare barrel lies wrapped in an asbestos sleeve. Ammunition belts are stacked in boxes, their brass links flashing when the sun hits them through smoke. A field telephone sits nearby, its cord running back to someone who can call for mortar adjustments. Every part of the position is built around one idea. Keep the beach in view. Keep the rhythm of fire steady. Keep the enemy from lifting his head long enough to organize. The corporal's face stays tight. He is calm the way exhausted men can look calm, because there is no spare space left inside him for anything else. When he blinks, his eyelashes are crusted with dust. When he breathes, it is shallow, as if deeper breaths might invite something worse. Below him, American infantry struggle in the water with M1 Garands held high, packs dragging like anchors. Some men carry bangalores and satchel charges above their heads like offerings. Bar gunners try to keep the bipod from sinking into sand. Radios, SCR sets meant to stitch chaos into orders, go under, come up, sputter, fail. The sea and the gear do what bullets don't. They steal balance, breath, and direction. Men stumble into shell holes that fill with seawater. Others go under and don't come back up, pulled down by the weight they were told they needed to survive inland. A few cut straps with knives, dumping their packs as if shedding skin. It buys them buoyancy. It also strips them of everything they carried for the days ahead. On the beach, the shingle bank becomes the first thin refuge. Stones and coarse sand rising just enough to break the line of sight. Men slam into it and flatten themselves behind anything that interrupts an angle. Obstacles, bodies, the shadow of a hedgehog. A medic crawls forward with a red cross on his helmet and no magic in his hands, only bandages, morphine, and the willingness to move toward the screaming. The corporal on the bluff sees the medics too. He sees men dragging other men by straps. He sees bodies roll with the surf and then stop moving. His assistant mutters something under his breath, half prayer, half curse, while he feeds another belt. The corporal says nothing. He cannot afford a sentence. He cannot afford a thought that lasts longer than a burst. For the Americans on the beach, the battlefield is not a line. It is a series of small, desperate worlds. One world is a cluster of men behind a steel hedgehog slick with seawater. They are too close to the surf. Every wave tries to pull them back. Another world is a shallow scrape behind the shingle where men dig with helmets and hands, nails splitting, fingers cramping, sand grinding into teeth. Another world is the open strip between cover points, a place so exposed it feels like the air itself is hostile. And yet, even here, the day does not become only a slaughter. It becomes a problem to be solved with timing. Men begin to coordinate without radios, using hand signals and simple shouts. Smoke grenades are thrown not to hide whole platoons, but to hide one sprint. One man moving from one obstacle to the next. A bar team crawls forward and sets up behind a hedgehog, the assistant pressing spare magazines into the gunner's palm. A rifleman clips in an en-bloc and fires at a firing slit he can't truly see, aiming at smoke and guesswork, trying to make the defenders duck for just 2 seconds. 2 seconds is enough for someone else to crawl. 2 seconds is enough for a medic to reach a wounded man. 2 seconds is enough for the beach to change shape. The MG-42 fires in bursts. Mortars take seconds to reload. Smoke drifts and then clears. Naval shells hit the hillside and force defenders to duck. These tiny disruptions, seconds long, are openings. Men begin to notice them the way a drowning man notices a floating board. The young corporal swaps barrels. His assistant's hands shake as he unlocks the hot metal, careful not to burn himself through the glove. For a moment, the gun is silent. In that moment, a handful of Americans get another 10 yards. The corporal slams the barrel home, feeds the belt, and resumes firing. While the beach fights for inches, the wider war sits just outside the frame. Present, but not delivered like a lecture. It is felt as a pressure, a need, a simple, brutal truth. This beach cannot break. Omaha is the hinge between landings to the west and east. If it collapses, the front risks splitting into vulnerable halves. If it holds, the sea behind it becomes a pipeline. More men, more ammunition, more guns, until the foothold hardens into something Germany can no longer push back into the water. But the plan arrives here already bruised. The channel is rougher than expected. Landing craft drift off lanes. Smoke and haze blur landmarks. Many Sherman DD tanks, launched too far out in choppy water, sink before they can fire a shot, leaving infantry with less armored support at the exact moment they need it most. Bombardment hits, but deep concrete and angled positions survive. Fields of fire remain intact. So the grand objective contracts into something smaller and more brutal. Survive the first hour, then survive the second. Then create a seam in the fire. Mid-morning on Omaha is a slow grind of decisions made under fire. Men dig shallow hollows behind the shingle. Every few seconds, someone lifts his head to see just a fraction, and drops again as rounds snap overhead. The air tastes of grit and smoke and the sour tang of explosives. Ears ring so constantly that silence becomes suspicious. Engineers attempt the work the entire plan depends on, clearing lanes through obstacles and wire so later waves can move. They carry wire cutters, satchel charges, and Bangalore torpedoes, long tubes packed with explosive meant to blast gaps through barbed wire. To place them, they must crawl into open sand and stay there long enough for fate to notice. A Bangalore tube is shoved under wire by trembling hands. It scrapes, catches, slides again. For seconds, the entire world is that scraping sound. Then, the charge detonates with a hard, concussive crack. Wire jumps. Sand erupts. A lane appears where there was none. It is narrow. It is contested. But it exists. Behind that lane, a group of men, mixed units, scrambled companies, forms around an NCO with a hoarse voice and no patience left for fear. He points with his chin because raising an arm is too risky. He doesn't talk about history. He talks about the next 10 yards. They move in short bursts, run, drop, crawl, run, using smoke like a curtain and explosions like a metronome. When a naval shell lands and the hillside shakes, they move. When an MG-42 pauses for a barrel change, they move. When their own panic becomes unbearable, they move because staying still feels worse than dying. Above them, the young corporal is no longer firing at neat waves. He fires at scattered pockets, men behind obstacles, men hugging the shingle, men belly-crawling in crater shadows. He sees a medic dragging someone by a strap and hesitates for a fraction of a second. Not pity, not mercy, just the human brain recognizing what it is seeing. One man refusing to leave another. A barked command from behind snaps the mechanism back into place. He fires again. But the world around him is changing. Destroyers edge dangerously close to shore, firing at the bluffs with a directness that feels almost personal. Each impact is a concussion that throws dust across firing slits and forces defenders to duck. The corporal blinks through grit, coughing. His assistant feeds another belt, hands trembling harder now. Barrel swap. Belt feed. Fire. The 5-inch guns are not precise scalpels, but at this range, they don't need to be. The shells arrive fast, hammering the hillside, collapsing sandbags, breaking up the neat confidence of fixed positions. Each impact is a physical shove that rattles teeth and turns, aiming into a struggle against your own body. The corporal learns a new kind of fear. Not the fear of being overrun, but the fear of being pinned in concrete while the earth is beaten apart around you. Concrete protects you until the moment it traps you. Every time dust blinds his view, someone below buys a second. Every time the gun goes silent, someone below buys 10 yards. And 10 yards, on Omaha, can be a lifetime. Before noon, then into early afternoon, the first meaningful pushes begin. Not as a single surge, but as multiple small climbs, each one a separate gamble. Some groups avoid the obvious beach exits, the draws, because those routes are funnels covered by bunkers. Instead, small teams angle toward rougher sections of bluff. Broken ground, shallow gullies, erosion cuts. Anything that is not a straight corridor into a machine gun. They climb by handholds, grass, roots, damp dirt, boots slipping, fingers clawing. Grenades arc upward into firing slits. Not always to destroy, often just to buy 1 second of silence. Rifles crack at close range. A bar chatters in short bursts, then stops, then starts again, as the gunner fights the bipod and the slope. On one MG position, the young corporal's world tightens. He hears footsteps where he never expected them to be. Behind him, to the side, closer than the surf. His MG-42 is still lethal, but it is directional. The slit that dominated the sand does not dominate the rear approach. He tries to pivot the gun awkwardly, trying to turn geometry into salvation. A grenade bursts nearby. Dust and fragments pepper the interior. The corporal and his assistant duck instinctively, ears ringing. When the ringing clears, his world narrows to the simplest question a soldier ever faces. Where is the next threat coming from? Americans crest the top in 2s and 3s, not in ranks. Filthy, gasping, eyes wide at the sudden openness. The beach below looks unreal. Wrecks, smoke ribbons, tiny figures pressed to the shingle like the earth itself is holding them down. Up here, fighting becomes intimate. There are no sweeping formations, only hedgerows, shallow trenches, scattered strongpoints, and men who suddenly see each other at distances measured in yards, sometimes feet. A bunker that ruled the sand can be vulnerable from behind. A trench line can be cleared one bend at a time with grenades and short rushes. Concrete that felt invincible from the front feels thin when the threat appears at the flank. In the hedgerows, sound changes again. Less echo, more muffled thumps, as if the land is swallowing noise. Men clear trench corners the way they were taught in training films, and the way they never believed they would do. Grenade first, then a rush, then a hard stop, then another corner. Sometimes the defenders fire back point blank. Sometimes there is only silence and the smell of powder and damp earth. A captured bunker is turned almost immediately into an American strongpoint. The same embrasure that spat fire onto the beach becomes a firing slit aimed inland, protecting the fragile exit routes. It is warfare's cruel symmetry. Concrete does not care who owns it. It only cares which direction it faces. American teams move cautiously, rifles up, throwing grenades into trench bends before following. They mark captured positions, turn them into footholds. Each foothold matters not as a symbol, but as a door for everyone still trapped below. Down on the beach, pinned men look up and see Americans on the ridge. The sight moves faster than orders. It means it can be done. It means keep moving. Late afternoon slides toward evening, and the soundscape changes. The constant ripping roar becomes spaced bursts, rifle cracks inland, mortars farther back, intermittent naval fire. Smoke thins enough to reveal the morning's wreckage. Twisted craft, scattered crates, abandoned packs, long drag marks through wet sand. Along the waterline, the tide keeps moving indifferent. It slides around wrecks, lifts loose helmets, nudges crates that will never be opened. A flare goes up somewhere inland and hangs for a moment, turning smoke into a pale ceiling. Then it fades, and the darkness settles back in. Medics work behind the shingle and in improvised aid posts inland. They are short on everything: bandages, morphine, hands, time. Men sit with backs against earth and stone, staring into nothing, because the mind can only swallow so much in one day. Omaha is not fully organized by nightfall. It is not safe. It is not clean. but it is held. And holding, on this day, is enough to keep the larger invasion moving forward. When the light starts to fade, I realize I haven't truly opened my hands all day. My fingers are curved around my rifle like they've forgotten any other shape. When I try to straighten them, pain shoots up my forearm and I almost laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's absurd that this is what my body chooses to notice after everything else. We're barely off the sand. The ground is damp and smells like crushed grass and smoke. Somewhere inland, a rifle cracks once. Lonely. Then nothing. The harsh battle noise is thinning now. Gunfire is still there, but it's farther away, broken into single shots and short bursts instead of that continuous tearing. Under it all, the ringing in my ears is its own sound, slowly fading like a tide that's finally deciding to pull back. The ocean is behind us, but I can still hear it, steady and indifferent. As the guns grow distant, the surf becomes clearer, almost calm, like the beach is pretending it was never a machine. Someone passes me water. I drink, and it tastes like life. I pull the photograph from my pocket. The edges are soft, the ink blurred where seawater kissed it. I press it against my lips anyway, because my body needs to believe there is still a world where paper stays dry. All day, that question has sat inside me. How do you keep moving when every instinct screams to stay down? I don't have a clean answer. There isn't one. You move because stopping is worse. Because lying still on that beach isn't rest. It's surrender. You move because the man beside you moves and you can't stand the idea of letting him do it alone. You move because training gives fear a direction. You move because sometimes courage isn't a feeling at all. Just an action you keep repeating until the seconds pile up into hours. And I think, quietly, reluctantly, about the men above us, the ones behind concrete and guns. I won't romanticize them. I won't soften what that uniform stands for. But I saw their silhouettes. I felt the precision of their fire. And in the middle of it, I understood something that makes me sick even now. Different side. Same machine. A soft music begins somewhere under the world. So faint, I'm not sure if it's real or only my mind trying to give the day a shape. Not a full melody, just a few careful piano notes spaced like footsteps on a quiet road. They don't erase what happened. They only make room for breathing. Darkness doesn't feel like relief. It feels like a pause. The war doesn't end on Omaha. It spills inland into hedgerows and villages and months of grinding ground. But those 12 hours stay sharper than everything after, because that's where I learned what my body can do, even when my mind begs it to stop. As the minutes pass, the surf seems to drift farther away, softer, as if the camera is pulling back from the shoreline into the dark. The piano lifts by a small degree, one higher note held longer, then released. Decades later, when storms rattle windows, I still hear the engine vibration. I still feel cold steel under my boots. I still see the ramp falling like a guillotine made of metal and choice. Sometimes, just for a heartbeat, I can hear that Higgins engine again under the storm, distant and wrong, like a ghost trying to start. And I remember the coin flip in my chest. I remember that it came up heads. I remember that I moved.